He nodded, leaning against the counter. The soup was excellent, by the way. My guests were very impressed. It was the first compliment he had ever given her. A small warm feeling spread through Zara's chest. Thank you, sir. It's my mother's recipe. They stood in silence for a moment. The only sound, the gentle hum of the refrigerator. Tell me about your app, he said suddenly. Zara's head snapped up, her eyes wide with shock. Sir, the app, he repeated. The one you scammed me with. Despite the circumstances, the idea itself was brilliant. The financial projection models were some of the best I've seen. Who helped you with them? No one, Zara said, her voice barely a whisper. I did it myself. I studied economics before I learned to code. Caleb looked genuinely surprised. You did all that yourself? Zara nodded. It's my passion. I've been working on it for over a year. He looked at her with a new kind of respect, a curiosity that went beyond her role as a housekeeper or a supposed criminal. He saw a spark of the intelligent, ambitious woman her sister had pretended to be. Why would someone with your talent resort to fraud? He asked, his voice softer now, genuinely curious. The question hung in the air between them. Zara's heart ached with the urge to tell him the truth, to clear her name, to tell him about Faith, but she couldn't. The loyalty to her twin, however undeserved, was too deeply ingrained. I was desperate, she said, lowering her eyes. It was the only answer she could give. Caleb didn't press her. He just nodded slowly, a complex mix of emotions on his face. He seemed to be seeing her for the first time, not as a thief or a servant, but as a person with a story he didn't understand. From that night on, something shifted between them. The cold indifference was replaced by a quiet awareness. He started talking to her more, asking her about her day, commenting on the meals she cooked. He would sometimes find her working on her laptop late at night, and instead of reprimanding her, he would ask a technical question about the app's functionality. Their conversations were always brief and professional, but they were a lifeline for Zara. They were small cracks of light in the darkness of her situation. She started to see the man behind the anger, a man who was intelligent, driven, and perhaps even kind. Bianca noticed the change immediately, and it made her even more vicious. She could feel Caleb slipping away from her, his attention shifting to the quiet, unassuming housekeeper. Her jealousy festered, turning into a dangerous obsession. She knew she had to do something drastic, something that would remove Zara from the house and from Caleb's life for good. The small seeds of kindness that had been planted were about to be threatened by a storm of pure malice. Bianca's jealousy was a poison that spread through the house, turning the atmosphere from tense to toxic. She saw the way Caleb looked at Zara now with a curiosity and respect that he rarely showed her. She heard the quiet conversations they had in the evenings, discussions about coding and business that she couldn't understand and deeply resented. She knew she was losing him, and she blamed it all on the housekeeper. One sunny afternoon, while Caleb was out for a meeting, Bianca put her plan into action. She had a key to the house and she let herself in, moving silently through the quiet rooms. She knew Zara was in the garden, tending to the flower beds. She went straight to Caleb's bedroom. On his bedside table, gleaming under the light from the window, was his favorite watch. It was a gift from his father, an expensive vintage timepiece that held more sentimental value than monetary worth. He never went anywhere without it. Bianca picked up the watch, its cool metal heavy in her hand. A wicked smile played on her lips. She tiptoed down the hallway to Zara's small room at the back of the house. The door was unlocked. She quickly slipped inside and tucked the watch deep inside Zara's wardrobe, hidden beneath a small pile of neatly folded clothes. Then she went back to the living room, poured herself a glass of water, and sat down on the sofa to wait, her heart beating with a nervous, triumphant rhythm. When Caleb returned home later that day, he was in a good mood. His meeting had gone well. He walked into his bedroom to change, and a few moments later, a frown creased his forehead. "Have you seen my watch?" he called out, his voice echoing through the house. Bianca, who had been waiting for this moment, walked to his bedroom door, her face a mask of concern. Which watch, darling? The one your father gave you? Yes, he said, his frustration growing as he searched his bedside table again. It was right here this morning. I never take it off unless I'm at home. That's strange, Bianca said, her voice laced with false innocence. Where could it have gone? She paused as if a terrible thought had just occurred to her. Darling, you don't think the housekeeper? Caleb's face darkened. He remembered Bianca's earlier warnings. He had dismissed them, had started to believe that Zara was different, that she was just a victim of circumstance. But now the watch was missing. The doubt came flooding back stronger than before. No, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. She wouldn't. Are you sure? Bianca pressed, her eyes wide with feigned worry. You said yourself she was desperate. A watch like that could be sold for a lot of money. Maybe we should just check her room just to be sure, to clear her name, of course. Caleb hesitated. It felt wrong to invade Zara's privacy like that. But the watch was his most prized possession. The thought that she might have stolen it after he had shown her a sliver of trust filled him with a cold fury. Fine, he said, his voice grim. Let's check. They walked down the hallway to Zara's room. Zara was in the kitchen preparing dinner, unaware of the drama unfolding. Caleb pushed open the door to her small, tidy room. It felt like a violation. Bianca went straight to the wardrobe. Let's just look here, she said, her voice full of fake sympathy. She rummaged through Zara's few belongings, her movements exaggerated. Then, with a dramatic gasp, she pulled out the watch. Oh, Caleb, she said, her voice trembling. I can't believe it. It was here all along. Caleb stared at the watch in her hand, and his heart turned to stone. He felt like a fool. He had been so wrong about her. He had let himself be swayed by her quiet demeanor, by her intelligent eyes. But she was a thief, just as he had first suspected. The anger he felt was sharp and bitter, mixed with a deep sense of disappointment. He stormed out of the room and into the kitchen. Zara looked up from the vegetables she was chopping, a small tentative smile on her face. The smile vanished when she saw the look in his eyes. What is this? He asked, his voice dangerously low, holding up the watch. Zara stared at it, her mind going blank with confusion. That's your watch, sir. I know it's my watch, he snarled. What is it doing in your room, hidden in your wardrobe? Zara's blood ran cold. My room? But I don't know. I've never seen it there. I would never. Save your lies. Caleb cut her off, his voice filled with contempt. I should have listened to my instincts from the beginning. I gave you a chance, Zara. I treated you with kindness, and this is how you repay me. By stealing from me. Bianca appeared in the kitchen doorway, her arms wrapped around herself, looking like a frightened victim. I told you, Caleb, she whispered. I had a bad feeling about her. Zara looked from Caleb's furious face to Bianca's triumphant one, and she finally understood. This was Bianca's doing. She had been framed. I didn't take it, she said, her voice shaking but firm. She's lying. She put it there. Caleb let out a humorless laugh. Of course. Blamed the innocent girlfriend. You are exactly what I thought you were, a common, pathetic thief. The words hit Zara like a physical blow. Tears stung her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She had reached her lowest point. She was trapped in a web of lies with no one to believe her and no way to prove her innocence. Pack your things, Caleb said, his voice as cold as ice. You can spend the night here, but first thing in the morning, I am taking you to the police station myself. Our deal is over. He turned and walked out of the kitchen, leaving Zara standing there, the chopping knife still in her hand. The hope that had begun to bloom in her heart over the past few weeks had been brutally crushed. She was alone, facing the terrifying prospect of prison, all because of a woman's cruel jealousy and a man's broken trust. The weight of Caleb's accusation settled on Zara like a physical shroud. Heavy and suffocating. The kitchen, which had started to feel like a place of creative solace, now felt like the prelude to a prison cell. She mechanically finished her tasks, her movements robotic, her mind a storm of despair and disbelief. How had her life come to this? She retreated to her small room, the site of her alleged crime. The space felt tainted, violated. She sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the wall, feeling a profound and crushing loneliness. She had no one to call, no one to vouch for her. Her one protector, her sister, Faith, was the very architect of her misery. For the first time, she felt a flicker of true anger towards her twin. It was Faith's greed and cowardice that had placed her in this house under the thumb of a man who now believed she was a thief. And yet, the deeply ingrained instinct to protect her family, even a family that had betrayed her, held her back from screaming the truth. What good would it do? It would be her word against Bianca's, and Caleb had already made his choice. With a heavy sigh, she pulled her small bag from the wardrobe and began to pack. There wasn't much to pack. A few changes of clothes, her laptop, and a small worn photograph of her parents. As she reached for the photo, her fingers brushed against a piece of paper tucked into the frame. She pulled it out, her brow furrowed in confusion. It was a letter folded neatly. The handwriting was her sister's. With trembling hands, she unfolded it. "My dearest Zara," the letter began. "If you are reading this, it means I am gone, and it means you are probably in a lot of trouble because of me. I am so sorry, sis. I never meant for things to get this out of hand. I was in debt, a deep, scary kind of debt. And I saw a way out. I used you. I used your name, your picture, your brilliant app. I scammed a man named Caleb, and I ran. I know it's cowardly. I know it's wrong, but I was so scared. I promise I will pay you back. I will make things right someday. Please don't hate me. You have always been the strong one, the good one. I know you will find a way through this. You always do. Yours always, Faith." Zara read the letter twice, the words blurring through a fresh wave of tears. It was a confession. It was proof. But it was also a confirmation of the depth of her sister's betrayal. Faith had known. She had known she was leaving Zara to face the fury of a scammed investor, and she had run away anyway. The tears that fell were not just of sadness, but of a bitter, wrenching anger. She clutched the letter in her hand. It could save her from prison, but it would mean condemning her own sister. Meanwhile, in the main house, Caleb paced his living room, a glass of spirits in his hand. He was still furious, but a small nagging voice in the back of his mind wouldn't be quiet. He thought of Zara's face when he had confronted her. The shock, the confusion, the hurt. It hadn't looked like the face of a guilty woman. He thought of the past few weeks, of her quiet competence, her intelligence, her unexpected kindness. It just didn't fit. His phone buzzed. It was a message from Samuel, his head of security, a quiet, observant man who had worked for him for years. "Sir, I think you need to see this. Check the footage from camera 7 this afternoon around 3:00 p.m. Frowning, Caleb pulled up the security feed on his tablet. Camera 7 covered the hallway leading to the staff quarters. He rewound the footage to the time Samuel had indicated. He watched, his eyes widening in disbelief as the footage showed Bianca looking over her shoulder, slipping into Zara's room. A few moments later, she emerged, a satisfied smirk on her face. A few hours later, the footage showed him and Bianca going into the room and Bianca discovering the watch. The truth hit him with the force of a physical blow. He had been played. Bianca had not only lied, she had orchestrated the entire thing to frame an innocent woman. He felt a surge of self-loathing. He had been so quick to believe the worst of Zara, so ready to condemn her based on circumstantial evidence and the whispers of a jealous woman. He had threatened her, insulted her, and was about to hand her over to the police. Shame and regret washed over him. He had to make this right. He put down his glass and strode down the hallway, his heart pounding with a new urgency. He had to stop her. He had to apologize. He reached her door and pushed it open without knocking. Zara was standing by the bed, her bag packed, the letter from her sister clutched in her hand. Her face was pale but resolute, her eyes red-rimmed but defiant. She looked up as he entered, and for a moment they just stared at each other. "Zara!" he began, his voice rough with emotion. He didn't know what to say. I'm sorry. Felt ridiculously inadequate. He had wronged her in the worst way, and he knew it. He had judged her, condemned her, and broken the fragile trust that had just begun to form between them. The lowest point had passed, but the path to redemption for both of them was just beginning, and it was fraught with the wreckage of his own foolishness. The silence in Zara's small room was thick with unspoken words. Caleb stood in the doorway, the tablet with the security footage still in his hand, his face a mask of shame. Zara watched him, her expression guarded, the confession letter from Faith, a crumpled ball in her fist. I saw the footage, Caleb said finally, his voice low. I know you didn't take the watch. Bianca set you up. A single tear escaped Zara's eye and traced a path down her cheek. It was a tear of relief so profound it almost buckled her knees. He believed her. After all the accusations, all the contempt, he finally believed her. I am so sorry, Zara, he said, taking a step into the room. His voice was filled with a remorse that was deep and genuine. I was a fool. I should have trusted my gut. I should have trusted you. Can you ever forgive me? Zara didn't answer immediately. She was too overwhelmed with emotion. She simply unfolded the crumpled letter in her hand and held it out to him. Caleb took it, his brow furrowed. He read the letter, his expression shifting from shame to shock, and then to a dawning understanding. He looked up at Zara, his eyes filled with a new level of awe and disbelief. This whole time, he began, his voice trailing off, you weren't the one who scammed me. It was your sister, and you've been taking the blame for her, working here, letting me treat you like a criminal. All to protect her. Zara just nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. The full weight of his misjudgment crashed down on Caleb. This woman, whom he had treated with such disdain, possessed a strength and loyalty that he had never encountered before. She had endured humiliation and false accusations, all to shield the very person who had put her in that position. Zara, I don't know what to say, he said, his voice. I have been unbelievably cruel to you. Before he could say more, his phone rang. It was the security gate. Sir, there's a woman here to see you. A Miss Bianca. Caleb's face hardened. Let her in, he said, his voice cold. He turned to Zara. Stay here. I need to handle this. Zara watched him leave, her heart a confusing mix of relief, sadness, and a strange, unfamiliar flutter of something else. Caleb met Bianca in the living room. She ran to him, her face a picture of concern. Darling, did you take her to the police? Is it over? Oh, it's over, Bianca, Caleb said, his voice dangerously calm. He held up his tablet and played the security footage. Bianca's face went from concern to pale with horror as she watched herself sneak into Zara's room. She looked up at Caleb, her eyes wide with panic. Caleb, I can explain, she stammered. There's nothing to explain, he said, his voice cutting through the air like a blade. I saw what you did. You framed an innocent woman because you were jealous. You tried to ruin her life. Get your things and get out of my house. We're done. But Caleb, I did it for us, she cried, tears streaming down her face. She was coming between us. I love you. Love, you don't know the meaning of the word, he said, his voice filled with disgust. What you did was cruel and pathetic. Now leave before I decide to show this footage to the police. Bianca stared at him, her face crumbling. She realized she had lost. With a sob, she grabbed her handbag and ran out of the house. Caleb stood there for a moment, the anger draining out of him, leaving behind a hollow emptiness. He had been so blind, so easily manipulated by a pretty face and a possessive attitude. He thought of Zara, of her quiet dignity, her resilience. She was nothing like Bianca. She was real. He went back to Zara's room. She was sitting on her bed, her bag still packed. She's gone, he said simply. Zara nodded. I'm sorry it had to end like that. Don't be, he said. I'm the one who should be sorry for everything. He sat down on the small chair opposite her bed, creating a space between them. The deal is off, of course. You're free to go. In fact, I owe you. Not just an apology, but payment for the work you've done. And compensation for this whole mess. He looked so genuinely remorseful that Zara's anger began to melt away, replaced by a weary sort of empathy. And about the app, he continued, looking at the letter in his hand. The idea is still brilliant. If you're still interested in launching it, I would be honored to invest. Legitimately this time, as a partner, Zara was stunned. After everything that had happened, he was still offering to help her achieve her dream. Before she could respond, the security gate buzzed again. Caleb answered it, his voice tired. What is it now, Samuel? Sir, there's a Mr. Julian here. He says he needs to see Miss Zara urgently. Zara's heart clenched. Julian. She had almost forgotten about him in the midst of the more immediate crisis. The past was literally knocking at her door. Caleb looked at her, his expression a question. He had no right to make this decision for her, and he knew it. Do you want to see him? Zara took a deep breath. She was tired of running, tired of hiding. It was time to face everything once and for all. Yes, she said, her voice surprisingly steady. Let him in. Caleb nodded, a look of respect in his eyes. He understood that this was a battle she had to fight on her own. The reckoning was not yet over. Julian walked into the living room, his confidence a stark contrast to the desperation he had shown on his last visit. He had clearly come prepared for a fight, perhaps with a lawyer's advice echoing in his ears. When he saw Zara, his expression softened into a practiced look of remorse. He completely ignored Caleb, who stood silently by the window, a silent guardian. Zara, Julian began, his voice smooth and gentle. I'm so glad I found you. I've been so worried. I was wrong to pressure you about the money. My emotions got the better of me. Can we please just talk? He tried to take her hand, but Zara stepped back out of his reach. The Zara who stood before him now was not the tearful, broken woman he had left behind. Her ordeal in Caleb's house had forged a new strength in her. She had faced false accusations and the threat of prison. Julian's flimsy apologies seemed like child's play in comparison. There's nothing to talk about, Julian, she said, her voice calm and clear. You showed me who you are. I believe you. Julian's smile faltered. Come on, baby. Don't be like that. What we had was special. You can't just throw it all away because of one stupid mistake. I was weak. I'm only human. It wasn't a mistake, Julian. It was a choice, Zara said, her eyes meeting his without flinching. And when I needed you to be sorry for hurting me, you were only sorry about your money. That told me everything I need to know. The finality in her voice seemed to get through to him. His expression hardened. So, this is about the money then. Faith was right. You're holding it over my head. No, Julian, Zara said, shaking her head. This is about me finally respecting myself. But since you're so concerned about your investment, let me put your mind at ease. At that moment, Caleb stepped forward. Mr. Julian, I presume, he said, his voice polite but firm. I am Caleb. I believe you and I have a mutual, though complicated, business interest in Ms. Zara's application. Julian looked at Caleb, then back at Zara, confusion and suspicion dawning on his face. Who are you? What's going on here? Let's just say I'm Zara's new business partner, Caleb said smoothly. I've had the chance to review her work, and I'm very impressed. I'll be funding the full launch of the app. He turned to Zara, his eyes soft. As for your initial investment, Julian, Zara said, taking her cue from Caleb, you will be repaid in full with interest from the first round of profits after the launch. You have my word. She was no longer the victim. She was a businesswoman, confident and in control of her own destiny. The power she had falsely claimed before, she now held for real. She was severing the last tie that bound her to him, not out of revenge, but out of a clean, decisive need to move on. Julian was stunned into silence. He had come here expecting a fight, a negotiation, maybe even tears. He was not prepared for this calm, professional dismissal. He looked at Zara, standing tall and poised, and at the wealthy, powerful man standing by her side, and he knew he had lost her completely. "Fine," he mumbled, his bravado gone. He looked small and defeated. "I'll expect my money." He turned and walked out the door without another word, his shoulders slumped. The moment the door closed, Zara let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. It was finally truly over. A wave of relief so strong it made her dizzy washed over her. "Are you all right?" Caleb asked gently, his voice full of concern. She looked at him and smiled, a real genuine smile that reached her eyes for the first time in weeks. "I am now," she said. "Good," he said, his own smile mirroring hers. He hesitated for a moment, the atmosphere between them shifting from professional to deeply personal. "Zara," he said, his voice softer now. "I know the timing is terrible and you have been through so much, but I meant what I said. I want you to stay, not as my housekeeper. I want you to stay here with me as my partner in business, and if you'll have me in everything else." His words hung in the air, a beautiful, terrifying promise. Zara's heart fluttered. She looked at this man who had gone from her accuser to her unlikely champion. She saw the sincerity in his eyes, the genuine care. It was a second chance at love, a chance she never thought she would get. But she also remembered the pain of her last relationship, the sting of betrayal. She had just found her own strength, her own independence. Was she ready to risk her heart again so soon? "Caleb," she began, her voice trembling slightly. The old doors were closed, but the path to a new one was still uncertain. She had to decide if she was brave enough to walk through it. The grand living room, once a symbol of Zara's imprisonment, now felt like a space of possibility. Caleb's offer hung in the air, a beacon of hope that was both thrilling and terrifying. Zara looked at him, at his earnest, hopeful face, and her heart did a little flip. But the scars from Julian's betrayal were still fresh. The idea of handing her heart over to another man so soon felt like jumping from a great height without knowing if there was water below. "Caleb, I can't," she said softly, the words tasting like disappointment even to her own ears. The light in his eyes dimmed slightly, but he nodded in understanding. "I get it. It's too soon. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have pushed. It's not that I don't want to," Zara said quickly, wanting him to understand. "It's just I've just gotten myself back. I trusted Julian completely, and he broke that trust into a million pieces. I'm not sure I know how to trust anyone like that again. Not yet." She looked around the vast, beautiful house. "And I can't stay here," she added. "Not like this. Every time I walk through these rooms, I'll remember being the housekeeper, the accused thief. I need to stand on my own 2 feet. I need to be my own person, not just someone living in your house." It was the most honest she had been with anyone in a long time. And the words felt liberating. She was no longer just reacting to her circumstances. She was defining them. Caleb listened intently and a slow, respectful smile spread across his face. He wasn't disappointed. He was impressed. He was seeing the full measure of her strength, the depth of her character. She wasn't looking for a rich man to save her. She was looking to save herself. "You're right," he said, his voice full of admiration. "Of course you're right. I was thinking like a man who wants to fix everything. But you don't need fixing. You just need a partner who believes in you." He paused. A new idea forming. "Okay," he said. "New plan. We start as business partners, strictly professional. I'll provide the funding for your app. Consider the first payment in advance, not a gift. And you should get your own place somewhere nearby, so we can work together easily. A place that is yours." Zara's eyes lit up. Independence, a space of her own, earned through her own talent. It was everything she wanted. "Really?" "Absolutely," he said. "We'll find you a great apartment, and we will make your app the biggest success story Azure Bay has ever seen. As for the other stuff, the everything else. We can take that as slow as you want. We can start with coffee, maybe dinner. No pressure, just two partners getting to know each other. A real heartfelt smile broke across Zara's face. This was different. This wasn't a whirlwind romance built on false promises. This was a partnership built on a foundation of mutual respect. It felt solid. It felt right. "I'd like that, Caleb," she said. "I'd like that very much." The next few days were a whirlwind of positive change. With Caleb's help, Zara found a beautiful small apartment in a quiet part of Lakeside with a balcony that overlooked a canopy of palm trees. It wasn't as grand as Caleb's mansion, but it was hers. She used the advance from Caleb to furnish it simply, creating a space that felt like a true sanctuary. They threw themselves into the work on the app. They spent hours in Caleb's home office brainstorming ideas, refining the business model, and planning the launch. Zara's passion for the project was reignited stronger than ever. Caleb was a brilliant business strategist, and his insights challenged her and made her work even better. Their professional partnership was seamless, a perfect blend of her creative vision and his business acumen. And true to his word, he took things slow. They had coffee in the mornings before their work sessions. They had dinner in the evenings, sometimes at his house, sometimes at a quiet local restaurant. They talked for hours, not just about business, but about their lives, their dreams, their fears. Zara learned about Caleb's childhood, his struggles to build his company from nothing, his passion for finding and nurturing new ideas. He learned about her love for coding, her relationship with her parents, and the complex, painful bond she shared with her twin sister. She found herself laughing more than she had in months. She felt a lightness in her spirit that she thought was lost forever. With each passing day, the wall around her heart began to crumble brick by brick. She was starting to see a future she had never dared to imagine, a future filled with both professional success and personal happiness. One evening, as they were walking back to her apartment after dinner, a comfortable silence settled between them. The night was warm, the air filled with the scent of jasmine and the distant sound of music. "You know," Caleb said, breaking the silence, "I've never met anyone quite like you, Zara." Zara smiled. "I could say the same about you, Caleb." He stopped at her gate, turning to face her. "Is it still too soon?" he asked softly, his eyes searching hers. Zara's heart fluttered, but this time it wasn't with fear. It was with a hopeful, happy anticipation. She took a small step closer and reached up, gently touching his cheek. "No," she whispered. "I don't think it is." He leaned down and kissed her, a kiss that was gentle and tentative at first, then deepened with all the unspoken emotion that had been building between them for weeks. It was a kiss of apology, of respect, of a new beginning. Just as they pulled apart, Zara's phone rang. She looked at the screen and her smile faded. It was the police. "Hello?" she answered, a knot of anxiety forming in her stomach. "Zara, this is Sergeant Peters," the voice on the other end said. "We have an update on your sister's case. We found her." The news that Faith had been found sent a jolt of conflicting emotions through Zara. There was relief, but also a deep churning anxiety. The final piece of her painful past was about to be confronted, and she wasn't sure she was ready. Caleb, sensing her turmoil, immediately took her hand. "Do you want me to go with you?" he asked, his voice a steady anchor in her storm. Zara looked into his concerned eyes and felt a surge of gratitude. She wasn't alone in this. "Yes," she said, her voice small. "Please." The drive to the police station was quiet. Zara stared out at the blur of city lights, her mind racing. What would she say to her sister? How could she face the person who had so thoroughly betrayed her, yet was still a part of her? When they arrived, a weary-looking sergeant led them to a small, sterile interrogation room. Faith was sitting at a metal table, her head bowed. She looked smaller, diminished. The flashy clothes and confident attitude were gone, replaced by a simple dress and an air of defeat. She looked up as Zara entered and her eyes filled with tears. "Zara," she whispered, her voice cracking. Zara stood there, frozen, the anger and the love for her sister warring within her. Caleb stood quietly by the door, giving them space. "Why, Faith?" Zara asked finally, the single word carrying the weight of all her pain. "Why would you do that to me?" Tears streamed down Faith's face. "I'm so sorry, sis," she sobbed. "I was in so much trouble. I owed money to dangerous people. They were threatening me, threatening to hurt me. I was desperate. I didn't know what else to do." She told Zara everything. The bad investments, the gambling debts, the web of lies she had spun to keep her creditors at bay. She had seen the 15 million from Caleb as her only way out, a quick fix to a problem that had been spiraling out of control for months. "I never meant for you to get hurt," Faith cried, her body shaking with sobs. I thought you would be okay. You're always okay. You're the strong one. I just wanted to run away and start over." Listening to her sister's broken confession, Zara's anger began to dissolve, replaced by a profound sadness. She saw not a monster, but a scared, flawed person who had made a series of terrible choices. She saw her twin, the girl she had grown up with, who had always been a little more reckless, a little more drawn to the glittering easy path. "You left me to face it alone, Faith," Zara said, her voice quiet but firm. "You let me become a servant. I almost went to prison because of you." The words hung in the air, heavy and true. Faith flinched as if she'd been struck. "I know," she whispered, her face buried in her hands. "I know, and I will never be able to forgive myself for that. I am ready to pay for what I've done." The sergeant cleared his throat. "Mr. Caleb has already informed us of the situation, ma'am. Since he is the primary victim of the fraud and is willing to work with us, and since you are family, we can discuss options, but she will have to be held accountable for her actions." Zara looked at her weeping sister, then at Caleb, who gave her a small, supportive nod. He was leaving the decision entirely up to her. She thought about her future, about the new life she was building with Caleb. Holding on to anger and a desire for revenge would only poison it. Her mother had always taught her that forgiveness was not for the other person, but for yourself, a way to release the burden of bitterness. "I don't want to press charges," Zara said, her voice clear and steady. Faith's head snapped up, her eyes wide with disbelief. But Zara continued, her gaze meeting her sister's. "You will pay back every cent to Caleb and to any other people you owe. You will get a job, an honest job, and you will work to make this right. No more shortcuts, no more lies." It was not a complete pardon, but it was a chance. A chance for Faith to redeem herself, and a chance for them to someday heal their fractured bond. Faith nodded, tears of gratitude now mixing with her tears of remorse. "I will, Zara," she promised. "I swear I will." Caleb stepped forward and spoke quietly with the sergeant, working out the details of a formal repayment plan. It would be a long and difficult road for Faith, but it was a path back to integrity. When it was all settled, Zara and Faith stood outside the station in the cool night air. For a long moment, they just looked at each other, years of shared history passing between them in a silent glance. Then Zara opened her arms. Faith hesitated for a second, then rushed forward, and the two sisters hugged, clinging to each other tightly. It was a hug filled with pain, with betrayal, but also with the unbreakable bond of family and the first tentative flicker of forgiveness. As Caleb drove Zara home, a comfortable silence filled the car. She rested her head against the window, feeling emotionally exhausted, but also strangely at peace. She had faced her past, confronted her sister, and chosen forgiveness over vengeance. She felt lighter, as if a great weight had been lifted from her shoulders. When they reached her apartment, she turned to Caleb. "Thank you," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "For everything, for believing in me, even when you had every reason not to. You made it easy to believe in you, Zara," he said, his voice soft. He reached out and gently tucked a stray curl behind her ear. "You have a good heart. The best I've ever known." The confrontation was over. The past had been faced. Now for the first time the future stretched out before her, clear and bright and full of promise. 6 months passed. The rainy season gave way to the dry, dusty winds, and then to the bright, clear days of a new year. Azure Bay buzzed with its usual relentless energy. But for Zara, the world had transformed. Her app, which they named Finease, launched with incredible success. Caleb's business acumen and Zara's innovative design were a powerful combination. It was featured on tech blogs and in business magazines. Praised for its user-friendly interface and its practical approach to personal finance in a local context. The profits began to roll in, far exceeding their most optimistic projections. True to her word, the first major withdrawal Zara made was to repay Julian. She transferred the $10 million to his account with a simple professional email, closing that chapter of her life for good. She was no longer a housekeeper or an accused thief. She was a CEO, the head of her own small but growing company. She moved into a larger apartment, one with a stunning view of the lagoon, a constant reminder of how far she had come. She hired a small team, and her days were filled with meetings, strategy sessions, and the thrill of watching her dream flourish. Faith, too, was on a new path. She was working a steady job as a sales assistant in a boutique in the Center District. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work. Every month, without fail, a portion of her salary was automatically deducted to go towards her repayment plan. The sisters spoke regularly, their conversations still fragile but healing with time. The trust was slowly being rebuilt, one honest conversation at a time. Caleb was a constant, steady presence in Zara's life. Their business partnership had seamlessly blossomed into a deep and loving relationship. He was her biggest cheerleader, her most trusted advisor, and her best friend. He celebrated her successes as if they were his own, and supported her through the challenges of running a new business. One beautiful Saturday morning, Zara was standing on her balcony, a cup of coffee in her hands, watching the fishing boats glide across the calm gray waters of the lagoon. The sun was just beginning to rise, painting the sky in soft shades of pink and orange. She heard the sliding door open behind her. Caleb came out, wrapping his arms around her from behind and resting his chin on her shoulder. "Good morning, CEO," he murmured, his voice warm in her ear. She leaned back against him, a contented smile on her face. "Good morning, Mr. Investor." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the sunrise. The city below was slowly coming to life, a symphony of distant sounds. "Do you ever think about it?" Zara asked softly. "How we met? How crazy it all was?" Caleb chuckled. "I try not to think about the part where I was a complete idiot who accused you of being a thief." Zara turned in his arms to face him. "But if none of that had happened," she said, her eyes serious, "we never would have met. Maybe it was all part of the plan." "If this was the plan," he said, his gaze tender, "then I'm grateful for every stupid, painful moment of it. Because it led me to you." He looked at her, at the intelligent, resilient, and kind woman he had fallen in love with. She was more beautiful to him now than ever. Not because of her looks, but because of the strength and grace she carried within her. "I love you, Zara," he said, the words simple and true. "I love you too, Caleb," she replied, her heart full. He leaned in and kissed her, a slow, sweet kiss that tasted of coffee and new beginnings. The sun broke fully over the horizon, flooding the balcony with a brilliant golden light. Zara looked out at the water, at the sprawling, energetic city she called home. Her life had been a chaotic journey of heartbreak and betrayal, of loss and unexpected second chances. But standing here now, wrapped in the arms of a man who truly saw her, who loved her for her mind and her heart, she knew she was finally where she belonged. She had faced her past, found her strength, and built a future she could be proud of. The storm was over, and a new day, bright with promise, had begun.